And
Also, turn your mic down. It's crazy hot.
oh, my bad. Oh, it's pretty low.
Hmm.
I need to put my pop guard on it, or at least the one that goes over the mic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cause
cause
I'm
I'm
like
like
10 or
10 or
20
20
decibels lower than
decibels
you,
lower than you.
so it's a lot.
So it's a lot.
But
Okay.
you can
You can
stop
stop the.
the screen share. Oh wait, I was just listening to myself like talk.
Okay. You guys give me just a moment.
It's all good. OBS is a free software, so it's finicky.
Okay. I figured out what it was. Totally had like 3 things missing, like not plugged into my computer.
Oh wow.
Okay, so my mic wasn't even on the right one as well.
Yeah,
Do I sound better?
yeah, you do.
Okay, good.
I was like, oh, it's
All right.
different, but still turn it down a little bit.
Yeah. Maybe I can. I have that pop card. So.
It isn't necessarily the pop either, cause like your T's and P's are all fine.
Guess I'm just too close to it or something.
Yeah, you should
I'll turn it down.
take it out of your mouth.
Got me.
Got him. I don't know.
All right,
It's so stupid.
check it. Check it.
Oh, what the fuck?
Uh-oh. Oh.
Oh,
Boom.
he
Okay.
lives.
So now I got the option to use my actual camera.
He
All right, let's try
lives.
this again. Let's get the stream going again. Get the recording going. I still have
He's up now,
still
buddy.
haven't figured out
Uh-huh.
the audio. Like there's all these channels on the streamer. I don't know if it's picking up like both Discord and my own audio. So you guys like give me a indication on which like what it's doing at the moment.
Alright, well,
Guess I'll turn on both audios and testing. You guys let me know if it sounds weird or anything. You guys talk as well.
testing.
I'm gonna
And
make sure.
right, because the mic audio for you comes out separate from the
Right.
Discord. And if it's muted, then it'll my camera's like a bit slow now.
Testing.
It's weird.
Testing.
Testing.
And I can't even check it on my computer because then it'll it'll stream
Right.
our stream and it'll just keep looping.
I have it on my phone. You sound fine. I think I sound a little hot, maybe. I sound horrible. What's going on?
Hmm.
Mm, Maybe maybe it's just how I sound.
You sound good to me here. I know Hannah's watching. Hannah, you can put in the chat if something sounds off. You should be watching in a different room somewhere. And then I let Lil Kennedy know that we're gonna be on. I haven't got a response from him, but that he should join if
Little T. That'd be dope. He should stare and watch every waking minute. See if this sounds any better. Yeah. I don't know what's going on.
And we got our first spam message already in the Twitch chat. It was quick. Didn't even know that was a thing. All right, how's the Twitch looking? Anyone? About to see on my phone, but I can't really tell.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Alright, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, that echoes in there. Do, do, do,
Yeah,
do. What the fuck?
yeah, I'm looking on my phone. It
Yeah.
sounds good for both of us.
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
I can
Let's get
only
rolling then.
listen to double so much.
Got all night.
Yes, sir.
Got viewers to appeal to.
All
Something like
17,000 of them.
that. Someday we'll get there.
Let's roll,
Just need
Tristy. The
2,000
floor is
episodes.
yours.
All right.
Big goal gulp.
Welcome to our fireside chat here, discussing something that is a little, I would say it's a little outside the norm, or at least outside agreement among a lot of people. It may be a little controversial, because I want to discuss something that is kind of going against um, the status quo of our modern day world, and that's the idea of working together. And that's kind of a broad way to say it, but there tends to be this phenomenon, like as companies get bigger, as groups get bigger, as you add more to a team, um, especially in the design field, you have to accommodate in some sort of way to distribute the duties of a project, or some kind of thing that you're working towards. You have to distribute it to a larger mass of people. And so I mean, every company deals with this in their own ways. But I want to talk about like the overall trend and what we see happening kind of worldwide. And this applies to not only architecture, not only the design field, but everywhere. Um, and it's kind of this. Um, I want to start with like a buzzword, and something that I learned in psychology, and you probably know what it is. Groupthink, which is I think it originated from like a psychological study. I remember I took psych in high school, and that was like one of the big chapters. And what that is basically, and I'm just gonna share just for a brief moment because I have something pulled up. Yeah. So you guys should see the move it over here so the stream can see it. I like this little AI feature that Google's implemented. You get like a nice rundown of something pretty quick. But groupthink is basically a psychological phenomenon that occurs when people strive for I can't say that word, within a group. And it can lead to poor decision making. That's like the big consequence of groupthink. And one of the like legendary examples that is listed even in the textbook that we read was the Bay of Pigs invasion. And anyone who doesn't know is I think during JFK's presidency, um, it was a big meeting between like all the leaders and the military generals and advisors, and basically as a group, they all decided to invade Cuba or attempt this little secret invasion of Cuba by sending some people on to the coast of Cuba, and it didn't go so well. And once it got broke out to the media, the news media, basically everyone was like, "How could this decision like of these superior minds of diplomacy in America, how could they allow something like this to happen? And how did no one catch it before it went out the door?" And so it's something that happens, in politics, and you have even greater consequences there. But in our field as well, when we're designing, it could be anywhere from 1,000 square feet to 100,000 to 1 million square foot projects, and it's being affected with the same phenomenon that we see from the Bay of Pigs. Of course, it's not as, it doesn't involve war, at least not yet. But this is something that, spreads to the design field. You see it in, we'll get to an example of like the film industry. Once you like take this, because in the arts, what you're trying to do is convey central idea, and you're trying to make this idea as strong as possible, um, to get the best outcome, basically, because you're trying to connect to as many people as you can. Um, and that's what we've seen from the greats within architecture, and it's why they are the greats, is because they're these individual minds who pretty much worked solo. I know most of them had either an office behind them, or they had some people that helped work with them, but it was really these singular minds that brought forth an idea and carried it through from the beginning of the architecture process, the design process, all the way through to the completion of it. And there's this aspect of having this main central character controlling the whole, everything that's happening on the scenes. And I mentioned the film industry because I'm kind of a film junkie, and I have a big appreciation for those star directors that kind of everyone talks about, the Tarantino, the George Lucas, of course, and the ones that are still kicking today, like Dennis Villanueva. He did the recent Dune, and he has a bunch of great films. But it's like these guys that rise up to fame, um, as great directors because you know them as having great movies. And there's a reason for that. And there's like this control that they retain to each of their movies that they do, that ultimately brings it to, having a great outcome. And it's why so many people like the movie. So it's this same. I draw a lot of like comparisons between the movie industry, like a director's job and an architect's job, because it kind of has similar flows. We're both like organizers of a huge team that's, everyone's part needs to be played the right ways to contribute towards one product. And that's a tough job because you're responsible for the overall design as well as everyone on the team. And it's a big ask. So it's no wonder that as time has gone on, uh, we've kind of gravitated towards bigger teams to deal with this. And bigger teams equals more efficiency, and that's just a practical thing that the developers who are asking for these buildings to be built will get a bigger bang for their buck because they're hiring, a whole group of 200 plus architects um, who have, all combined has way more experience than one individual would have. But somehow in the 19th, the 20th century, we get these singular great minds who pierce through and make a name for themselves. In a time that was, I think, opportune for individuals to rise up because architecture wasn't as um, you know, before the factory came along and made all these products that speed up the construction and like dumb down the design aspect so that you're not doing as many custom details in projects and you're just using this product instead. Before all of that, there had to be some real ingenuity to this thing called architecture. Um, and this is how these individuals came to rise uh, among this. So my first point was like the group think, and there's like a good side of it, and the bad side is like what comes up all the time. Because I know I expect you guys here, and thanks for joining. We kind of had smaller turnout today, but that often means that we get to like get into the topic a bit more, and we can each say more about it. But I kind of wanted this. I was thinking this would be more like a debate discussion, because the first title I thought of was like individualism versus collectivism, or individualism versus like teamwork. Uh, yeah, like team structure. Um, and it's easy, I think, nowadays to be on the side of collectivism because that's kind of what the theory that we roll with today, and that's what it's what works, and that's what offices are going towards, and it's more efficient, and it better bang for your buck, and it's just what we roll with nowadays. So I want to kind of open it up to you guys and like initial thoughts of like architecture existing within like individualism versus collectivism, and how like your initial thoughts, because I know I just made it this topic and brought it here, and you guys are just kind of along for the ride, but to get your like initial thoughts on what you think architecture should be moving towards, mostly because I feel like I've been rambling this whole time.
Like what it's been moving towards, I don't know if it's moving towards anything different than what has already been done. I feel like architecture was already a more collaborative practice in terms of just how many people work in the industry, from architects themselves to people who build these um, structures. So I feel like it's always been more collaborative, and it's when it's an individualist thing, it's more of a prestigious thing. And that was only recently, actually, in like in terms of human history.
Right.
And
That's a good point. There's like that one liver because before they like the late 1800s, you didn't really have big architect. Um, the only ones that maybe you did was like people who worked for the government and they were responsible for these big monuments or something like that. But then it was like this brief period in the 1900s, you get like this influx of just great minds doing their own thing and getting famous for it.
Yeah, yeah, and
And
also when
now
I
I
think
feel
of,
like, go ahead.
I was gonna say when I think of it, there are some older buildings that do have names attached to them, like just a singular name. So I still think that's very like that's even more rare back then than it was in the 1800s and afterwards.
Right. And so, like, just as we came into the 1900s, not having like this large library of known architects, I feel like we're slowly flipping back into that as we progress in the 2000s. It's more so, I mean, we do have our big names. Um, we have like Bjark Ingels and Zaha Hadid, but at the same time, these names that we know are attached to these huge companies that have hundreds of employees that back these guys up. Um, and the designs, like the projects that they're pumping out, um, there's so many hands, touching this project that it's hard to trace it back to that original name. It's hard to credit that original. Of course, they founded the business or the company, and overall, they have large responsibility for everything that goes through the company. But the work is being like distributed down to so many people. Um, Hard to say it has the same spirit as when we just had Le Corbusier out there, or Frank Lloyd Wright. Even whenever Frank Lloyd Wright did have his own collective within the school of Taliesin, it's kind of like each of those apprentices were there to serve him, which of course nowadays is like a horrible thing to think about. But it's interesting touring Taliesin and all the stories that the tour guide would tell us is, it seemed like the apprentices were just happy to be there doing anything really. There one guy was responsible for like carrying the food on the picnic every day. That's like all he did, but he was like happy just to, be around that type of genius. Um, so I don't know, Monty, did you have any thoughts so far?
Yeah, this is probably one that I've thought about a bunch, and I'm not quite sure where I land because it is a bit vague, and in that you always end up with both extremes being a part of the equation eventually. But I think it's crucial to break down what we are speaking about because our jobs are so complex and so layered. And I and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're getting at is in the decision making in what we call the design, in that process of the partie and the purity of the singular artist
Yeah, because
versus artist by committee.
because in the 1900s we had all these architects and you could track their work across time, and it did seem like art pieces that were all made by one person because it had this identity to it. Each project had that, people call it style, but the Le Corb
Right.
style is a very recognizable thing. And then if you try and track that same style within a firm, especially a super mega firm that's doing, hundreds of tens of projects at a time, and they have this large portfolio of tons more projects. Can you really draw the same like similarities between these projects, and are you getting like a singular design philosophy from that firm?
Well,
The answer is going to be no, because you just have so many designers touching different projects, and it's just not the same. Yes.
right, but even like Korb, if you look at it, he had much different work at the start, in the middle, and at the end of his life. And at the end, he was playing a lot more with different materials, mostly because he was also in other parts of the world, but he really pushed. He still had obviously a lot of the major components, but for the post part, he kept evolving and pushing because like if you showed like Unite to him or anybody in like 1920, they would have probably laughed at you. And
Mhm.
and there is something beautiful to he was able to hone his own personal thoughts in craft. Because one thing it's really struck me in, well, do you put an important decision on an individual or on a group? And I lean more and more in theory to the right individual, but also that would mean the right group is just as right. But I feel or experience in a group, everybody wants to abdicate responsibility rather than take a risk. Versus if it's just me and my name, I can do anything, and there's no one to consult with on anything. But on the flip, you have to know everything, or else in this economy, you'll just get priced out and really be unable to build. Like, it's a really interesting point that the 20th century was the time for architects. And it was because, I mean, two insane wars just happened, and it left a bunch of need for building and building in a brand new way. For the most part, materials were not as much as it is today at all. So being
Right.
able to build a lot faster because land and materials are a lot more readily available, they also could test a bit more. One thing though is there are the few in this era that were quote unquote individuals, but a majority of them were attached to schools, especially the European ones. They were heavily compound based, and in that it has its own like micro collectivism problem of, I forgot exactly how you put it earlier, but everybody, oh, the striving for consensus. That's that
Mhm.
was put beautifully because it only strives for acceptance of the now instead of trying to test out and push what's new. And that is a lot more progressive versus if it's an individual. And I found myself thinking about a judge and how it's one person, and obviously there's a jury, but it's on the judge to decide a lot about most cases because most stuff doesn't even go to trial anyway. And a judge has to decide, and if that weight is put on one person, well, then they'll feel that weight a lot more personally and ideally hold it to a higher standard of morality rather than if it's a group of 6, 10, 12, 400, 535 people, well, then you can talk behind people's backs, you can pick other plans, you can be sneaky, and that can happen even with 2 and 3 people, so
And there's this other like aspect that comes into groupthink that doesn't exist when it's just the individual making the decision, and that's there's like this extra factor of like trying to please or pick the option that would not ruffle as many feathers as possible. So now
right,
you're like not only thinking about the problem at hand, but now you're thinking of how you can please the most people, which just derives it muddies up the project at hand. Shouldn't even be thinking about these like trivial things. You should be more focused on the project, and having a group can kind of take away from that, I think.
it seems it's because for whatever reason people would much rather follow than lead. And even when you try and put people on a committee, there's still always some de facto leader, or even a few, and they're butting heads. But most people, I mean, sat in many college classes, many boardrooms where everyone's like just quiet,
Yeah.
not saying what they're actually thinking.
Isn't there just like this universal like social anxiety within like so many people? I know some people just don't have it at all. They'll walk in a room and they'll be as loud as they want. They'll say what they want. They don't care who's listening.
Right,
And I love people like that because they break the ice and these
right,
situations where like it just seems like more and more majority of people are like isolating themselves from the conversation, like they're receding and
right.
not putting forth as much. And I'm guilty of this as well. I mean, I don't know if I can just attribute that to being introverted, um, because I try and challenge myself each and every day to break away from that anxiety that comes with social situations. Because, if
Mm,
everyone is acting in that scared state of trying to please everyone in the room, you're not going to get great ideas coming out of an architecture firm.
So
And I think
then, well,
that's
on
essentially what groupthink is.
right, and on this first point of groupthink in our field, in our profession, in our process, should there be a group involved in that design process? Is it even possible to not have a group in this highly specialized world? Pana, what you think?
Like, I'm confused by your question if we need a group of specialized people.
It's like our field has been like so intensely specialized, like every aspect of it is handed off to one person to do. Like um you have a person who's super good at schematic design, laying out the floor plan. You have your project architects who are there to kind of guide the code to make sure everything's in place. And even beyond the architecture firm, it's like you have your engineers or your
Exactly.
garage consultants, things that architects previously did,
Yeah.
but now we have consultants for,
And
just
also,
because.
even back to, sorry to cut you off, but like even back to what we call as the first architect, Brunelleschi, he was also in construction too, and he was the general contractor, and we've like abandoned all of that. So the question is more like, do you think it's possible to still get as iconic and breakthrough of design and our spaces with a group, or do you think we'll just be really great at copying what we've done already and have nothing new?
So it's important to like what look at the magazines that are congratulating firms, look at like AIA's awards, and look at what we value as a society as great architecture now. It's the projects with the renderings that have the most green in it, almost. Those it's kind of shifted from
That's
like
so
this
funny.
focus of, I mean, that's what it is. Like the more trees you put in your rendering, the better it is. I mean, you see it in schools as well. Like everyone's
Right.
slowly, like you can put the most dreariest drab skyscraper on a skyline and then just add some like bushes that just hang off ledges. People are like, oh, green architecture. So like the focus has shifted from like a genius, innovative mind to this kind of watered down, is your building sustainable? Is it green? Is it saving the planet? Which is great. And it's something that I definitely want to get more into. In fact, my firm had a team meeting this week and we like kicked off the Green Council within the firm, which is like a little team of people that came together and they're like, let's actually start offering services to clients for making the project more green because that's what society is focusing on nowadays. It's like
Why wouldn't you
they
already do
award you
that?
for it. Oh, exactly. It's, I mean, and that's things that
And
these
what do you
older
mean by
architects
that?
already did. By what?
Define green.
Well, see, that's a hard thing. Well, it's not really hard, but it's we don't think of the actual definition of it every time we see a building that wins as like having the best sign. It's kind of just like one of those words that just satisfies a little checkbox in your mind, and it's like, oh, good, it's not harming the planet as much, even though it definitely could be still.
Right.
You don't automatically think of like the AC systems are like these these expensive ones that have less carbon output, and these passive designs are employed, and we don't think of like all the actual things that go into it. Like you ever check out like a lead certification like requirements and like all
Yeah.
the different categories and
Yeah.
the points for each one? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
we
yeah.
don't really think of that. And even if you do, lead is just like one organization that is attempted to define what is green. And of course, there's a bunch of others like well, and gosh, we had in one of our classes, we had to like quiz over like how many different ones.
Right. I mean,
There's a lot
for
of
the
different.
post part, it's lead and well, and lead's about the buildings, but well is a lot more about the people inside rather than the actual like building
Right.
itself. But I think
Oh,
all of
well,
that. What was that?
well extends to like it's like more than the building. It's like the site shaping, and
Right.
even like I think the civil work has some kind of aspect to it. But yeah.
Right. Mm, Bunny?
Oh, yeah, I can see how that like award can even have an influence on what kind of design we're focusing on. Because, like Tristan was saying, there's even thoughts of incentivizing clients to to pursue a certain type of design, in this case, like green. And so if if one firm is doing that, there's essentially like 100 times more doing that, and then that's the influence or like the trend of architecture. And architecture shouldn't be focusing on like trends; it should be more long lasting. It it's supposed to be thinking about its use during its lifespan, the people it's serving, and overall, like if it's a good composition or not. And in a way, would like building codes also be trends? That that's something that I'm not sure about myself because I can see like building codes is a lot more complicated because building codes exist to provide a sense of security and safety for people, both on the architect's end and the client's end and people who use the building. Um, but
Well,
I feel
it's
like
more like
building,
they're like sorry, it's more like the codes are like only serving the people, and the architects owners have to deal with it. So it's like the codes are
yeah,
the people's voice. It's like the people who use the building, which we should be thinking about all the time. But uh, codes are there to make sure that we think about it for sure, and
yeah,
especially the clients, because the code kind of saves our designs in some ways because the client, especially a developer, is just going to try and get the cheapest output, and the code prevents a lot of like strategies that they could be using to just making it, making worse buildings, but I guess the profit's better for them. So yeah, go ahead.
yeah. Because like in the building codes, in a way, I have been thinking of them lately like another trend. It's crazy because, like, yes, a building code is supposed to provide safety for people. I can see why it exists. It completely makes sense. So it comes to a point where does everything on the code serve a purpose other than to push an agenda? Because I can see safety being a reason to have a certain rule, but it gets very specific very fast, and it is more pushing an agenda of some source of like what looks best or aesthetically pleasing. It's not up for people to really decide in a sense. Um, it it kind of makes buildings look similar for that
Mhm.
reason. It's not allowing creative freedom or creative solve problem solving. It also kind of makes architecture like an assembly line.
Yeah,
Um,
that's exactly
yeah.
like what happened within the 1900s. Like you get all these factory products, and I think the beginning of modernism is when we first started getting the assembly the assembly lines and factories to provide these products. That's why we get like the all the steel structure buildings, and um but at some point, like, I don't know, it the creativity of using these assembly lines to the benefit of the project was lost, and instead we got all these manufacturing companies just multiplying exponentially, and they have all these products that and they're all working to get the price of this product as low as possible so that architects will use them or owners will use them. um, and so you get over time just this cheaper and cheaper product, which, overall the quality of it is going to go down. That's just like a consequence of efficiency. Now, as architects, and we were taught in school, is to try and push against this like naturally occurring thing that's happening. Um, and that's when like the individualist soared in the 1900s, is because they did have well, first off, they were early enough to not have that pressure of having to pick like a standardized siding to a building. Like for example, this project we're working on, um, I'm like, oh, can we like use an actual wood siding that'll really complement like the rusticness of this building. And the first thing that everyone said back was like, no, we have a fiber cement board that standard we typically use for this situation, just because the maintenance is a big issue in wood, and it's cheaper, of course, to over time to just use that fiber cement, but you lose like the realism, because fiber cement board you can have like a wood grain look to it. So the idea is there, but like there's always like a bit of falsehood that comes with it. Like it's not actually wood.
Right.
It fools mostly everyone. But I guess if you're around that building more and more, you you sort of get the feeling that it's kind of a fake front for wood.
Well, and often it overlaps. Yeah,
What do you
instead of
mean?
often it's not done nicely, and
Oh yeah, yeah. Like
it
literally overlaps.
yeah. Well, because it's a siding, so it has the flashing over the top. Basically, it's how they solve that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like, okay, that's just siding that's as cheap as possible. But there's a few pictures on here of where it looks like wood, and it's actually not too bad. But there is that real, because also they're all like the same color, and they're all like this kind of same grain complexity, and there's not much actual
Well, and what
variety.
it's doing, like it's satisfying the visual aspect of it, but I feel like architecture, maybe it's more of a residential thing, but the other senses come into
Right,
play, and they should come into play with the materials
right.
that you're using.
The
Even if there's
feel,
like a smell to the wood,
right,
and
the smell.
of course feeling, and I guess residential architects get more freedom in the clients that they're working with, like push towards that sort of thing. But like commercial projects are more about, can we fascinate the eye of someone passing by? There's no need to do anything else besides that. As long as it's visually interesting and it's efficient, it's cheap, it has a long lifespan. That's all we need, really. And
Right.
who's to say that's not the right way to go for architecture? I mean, if it's the more efficient way, we're not, if we're draining people's pockets for something that's not worth what it is, then are we the good guys or the bad guys for doing that?
Well, I
I don't know.
think we should break down what even you mean by efficient. Because, yes, if it is a little bit longer lasting and there's less maintenance and it costs less, but what is the actual cost of production? How far was it shipped? Is it even natural? Buildings aren't always supposed to be around literally forever, and switching out materials isn't like the end of the world either. And just saving a few bucks to have it come in from halfway across the world. Why is it so much cheaper over there if it is truly the same product? And the answer is only one thing, it's exploitation, without a doubt. And us complying in that combined with how is it green if it's being shipped halfway across the world? Is there not some material close by that we can just pick up and use? And often in lead they do have like the whole radius impact, and if things are closer, but it's almost done in like a token kind of a way. It's not even the first principle of our design, and because what is even designing a building or a space in a certain geographic place?
And this kind of hits on point something else I wrote down concerning the film industry.
I
Because I
want to
recently
say
watched.
first that
Oh,
was
go ahead.
deep.
Yeah.
Oh, that was deep.
Bonnie's
That's
always
it.
deep.
Yeah.
Good
But
shit.
continue
Are
on,
you
Tristan.
moving off of green or is it staying green? Because I have one last point on it.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I was about to shift the topic completely,
Okay,
so
cool.
you finish
So
your thought.
moving from being deep into a little more practical reality. Could you mute, Bunny?
Oh,
Yeah. Um, I saw this thing today, and it's interesting how, in speaking about green and being efficient, it's all of these very minor, slightly, maybe 1 to 5 to 10% more efficient devices that we're currently operating with. AC being a gigantic consumer of power. Gas is its own discussion, but almost all AC is electric, so it's powered that way, and it costs off the grid. There are many places in this world that do not have access to such power grids as us here in the
Are you
US.
showing something, Monty?
What?
Are you showing something?
I'm about to.
Oh,
I am now. So I came across a wind catcher, a tower that they use in the Middle East to catch the wind, force it down in the building, and then force the hot air out. And often they had, let me just click here, often they had a stream of some kind actually underneath, or even not just a regular stream, but they would build an underground aqueduct throughout the cities in order to cool the buildings down. Because also there wasn't power in any other place. And this is only having to do with the air circulation. So imagine if we started here and also took into account, I don't know, the sun and be able to counteract actual thermal heat gained through enclosures and screens, and also harness the heat rather than just have a better window. Because also having a more efficient window, how is it built? Where is it from? How is it only more efficient because it's cheaper? Why is it cheaper? Where is it even from? Are people even voluntarily making our products? Like that's often a big issue. And natural ventilation is not new. It's actually quite old. And us being in this era, oh yeah, of course a contractor would say, oh yeah, I'll just slap a C on it, but we don't even allow ourselves to have that argument because we say, okay, mechanical engineer, put AC on it. Obviously, this is not 100%. It's all about mitigation. But if we aren't radically trying to change from the wind and the sun to exactly where you are in the world, it'll just be continuous suburbia on a grid that honestly can't take it.
yeah. And to bring this full round to the topic of individualist versus collectivist, I think when you have companies that are already set up in their ways of doing projects, repetitive projects over and over. Like I just got to start a project pretty much from scratch, and everyone like on the team that had been there for a couple years, they kind of knew the process. They knew the construction type. They knew we work with bid, sorry, we design build MEP contractors, so we don't even
Okay.
paint through the design process until
It's
uh,
time.
I guess, or even after that, like during CA or something.
Basically, like RFIs, like, hey, there's a problem. What do
Yeah,
we do
like
here
I
now?
think what we do, I haven't been to that, I haven't got to that part yet, but
Mhm.
I think what we do is just like hand off the construction documents to a MEP designers, and then they design the whole package, give
Yeah.
it to or they have the firm that builds it as well. And interesting, but basically, when we start off these projects, it's the goal in mind, and it's directly because the client that we're working for, the goal in mind is to have the most cost efficient building, and we don't even bring up these ideas of like all these uh, passive green uh, ideas for a building. Like that doesn't even come up in the conversation because there is like this templated fashion of doing projects that the company is comfortable with. And when you have a company that's bigger, you're going to tend to just try and follow these standardized
Mm.
formats, as as close as you can, especially when there's new people like myself, joining the company, and we're like, what do we do with our hands here? Like, come on, master architects, teach me how to do this. And it's something we lost whenever architecture moved from apprenticeships to just like college and then throwing you in an office.
Yeah, I
Is it's like
want to bring it
we
back.
learn, yeah, I know. We just like learn the processes of the company without like really learning why or how we're doing them. It's like we're just following the template that we've been handed. I mean, Vanessa, you and I know this from Strand. I mean, Strand was like template city. Like they did so well at organizing the architecture branch that someone new could join, and you hand them like a packet and a few like video recordings, and they can do the whole job just based off of that. No thinking required, by the way. You're just a robot once you join. So, I mean, I'm not saying all companies are like that, but there's certainly like as the company grows, as there's like this factor of like population growth that you can't get around because it's just going to happen regardless. And it's like it's more about the strategy that you use to deal with that. And companies, how they deal with it is coming up with standards and standardizing as much as possible so these newbies know what to do, and be they can be a money gainer for the company rather than a money hit trying to teach. That's why you can't have apprenticeships anymore unless you find like that lone wolf architect, and for some reason your portfolio interests him. He's like, okay, I'll take you on, but it's going to be rough and you're going to have to learn real quick, and it's sink or swim. But if you get through all that, you're going to be an actual architect in no time, and you're not going to be, taking 20 years to actually grasp the whole concept of being an architect, which I feel like could happen if you're just working for HKS for so long. Now, there is a factor of individualism that you can use in these larger firms to distinguish yourself. And I think that should be everyone's goal moving into this modern world full of larger firms that have this collectivist mindset. You can retain your individualist goals and ideals, and you can push that within the firm. Because if there's one thing that really disrupts a collectivist idea is a firm individualist, for the good or the bad, but you should be making it for the good, because when there is, like, if individualism is the good guy here, and that's kind of what I'm advocating for, collectivism, there's good to it, but overall you can get like watered down design ideas. But the more like individual spirit you have within these collectivist companies, I feel like those individualists are the ones who rise up to the top quicker, and their ideas get more traction within the company. So that's why you have like that guy Patrick Schumacher, the pretty much the next, or the CEO of Zaha Hadid nowadays. That Zaha's gone. Like, I don't know his complete story, but I'm sure this guy, and I know he wrote like a paper on parametricism, and he's like all about that stuff. Um, but he has like this strong individualist idea. I know your dad hates him, but I kind of like some of the stuff he talks about, and um, he definitely has like a strong idea for what he thinks architecture should be, as opposed to a lot of people who just don't know what architecture should be. They don't really have a strong opinion on it. But in his case, he now the leader of Zaha Hadid. Um, and it's good that they do have a leader that has some clue of what they want to do.
He
It's
is
easy to have a leader who doesn't.
he is both principal of Zaha Hadid Architects and chairman for life of the Employee Benefit Trust owning ZHA. Wow.
Nice. Yeah, he's balling.
So a
Some
trust
people say
owns
Zaha's
the
going
firm.
downhill, though.
Yeah, I mean, isn't she dead?
I mean, yeah, but yeah, ever
It,
since they released that article about them like only doing AI generated design,
oh yeah,
like, do we really want to? I mean, you guys were doing good doing your own thing, but
right.
I guess it really was Zaha who was pushing it
Yeah,
forward.
she was the magic, the
I
machine.
wonder what'll happen to Frank Gehry
Right.
associate, right?
I
Frank Gehry's.
honestly think that if it's named after like a specific person, just dissolve it. Just dissolve the name. Come on,
Yeah,
like what are we doing here? Like it's
yeah,
about the ego. The person is not here. It'd be like having a. I mean, restaurants do that all the time, but a chef run restaurants and then the chef leaves. It was about the chef. I mean, yes, you can have another phenomenal chef, but it's not that
right.
guy's name or her name or
Change the name, put like a statue of him, and you're good.
yeah, like
Let him live in, you know,
That's that's
perpetuity.
crazy. I one time was interviewing at a firm that I interviewed it years ago, but they were the firm was named after somebody. His name was in the firm name, but he was still in the company and he was transitioning the firm into him retiring. So they were already rebranding himself, even though he was still going to be at the firm another 5 years.
Hmm,
I
that's a
thought
good
that
way
was
to like get
interesting.
ahead of it.
right.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
have to have some kind of plan in place, or you'll
yeah, I
just
thought
be
it was,
Zaha Hadid forever.
yeah,
Yeah, it's funny how architects' egos have outweighed their marketing abilities to name a company.
So
It's
even
like
like, what does HKS stand for?
it's a person's
Surely it's
name.
someone's
Yeah.
name.
Yeah, I
So it's
forget it
like
exactly, but yeah. I mean, they're all names.
UM and like, yeah, I mean they're all names.
Almost all. Not OMA, even though they're an acronym. Not Porphosis. Porphosis is a wicked name. Like they nailed that.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Same thing with SciArc.
Yeah.
I don't know what SciArc actually stands for. Do you?
Southern California Institute of Architecture.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow, that worked out for them.
HKS. HKS was founded by Harwood K. Smith.
Yeah, yeah, like it's one guy.
Oh, it's one guy. Damn.
Yeah.
Good for him.
But it's just bad branding, bad. I mean, no one's even heard of HKS out. I mean, I guess they have enough clients that have heard of them that, works, but that's also kind of a problem is we've moved architecture to B2B instead of to the actual end user. It's at least out of B to I institutions, because it was just churches or just the state doing everything, and then you had like a shack that I mean, that's it. And it is
Yeah.
that architecture. It's funny how you mentioned earlier there isn't anybody before the 19th that's really popping off. And I was like, wait a minute. But then you added the caveat that isn't just for the church. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Michelangelo and Brunelleschi both were church or royalty goers, but
Who else
that's
has
my
the money back then?
right. And that's my hope that we can shift now. Like, even though the average person isn't balling, it's collectively it's a lot of cash, so it's not as if us and we the people have no purchasing power at all. It's just fractured it out more, but we do have quite a bit. I don't know the actual stats on that actually. And it all like depends on how it's cut off, if it's like top 10%, top 1%, and if it's companies also. But at least the idea of your own personal home was that you could build it yourself. And people did that for a long time, and they still do in many parts of the world. Like, even our neighbors, Mexico, like, most of them build their own homes, and it's concrete. It isn't like a wood, like tin or what have you. And they build a bunch of them with rebar sticking out the top, so you can always add on if you want to.
Hmm.
You know,
Right.
and instead of, okay, my house is like only this big, but then you end up with these like really crazy facades of like it's basically like a patchwork quilt of like just over time, just yeah.
The walled city of Kowloon in China somewhere. Have you heard of that place?
No, what is that?
That would be a great. I don't know. You could probably qualify it for architecture and crime because tons of crimes happen within. So yeah, go ahead and look it up. It's like this. It
Kowloon
used
walled
to be,
city.
yeah, it used to be a thing.
Oh yeah, no, I I've looked
The
this up
densest
before.
civilization, or I
Yeah,
guess city
it
settlement that has ever existed.
and it's ungoverned.
People, yeah, ungoverned. It's kind of like what we did with Portland for a little bit.
I
We're
think
just like,
it's
you
still
guys do your own
happening.
thing. It's still happening. But yeah, China was like, you guys do your own thing there. And that's what they did basically. They just built
Jesus.
on top of each other, and you had to crawl through the streets to get to where you're going,
Oh
and
really?
drugs and gang violence everywhere. And
And like, what's crazy is I have a picture of it pulled up. It's not that much space. Like it's
I mean, talk about density and
yeah,
urban density.
right,
This is like the opposite end of that. Like, this is not what you want.
right.
Low building
Wow.
regulation. People just literally built on top of their neighbors, to the side of their neighbors. They built in the streets. I don't even think they really have streets in there, like alleyways. But imagine taking a
Mm,
cross section of that.
nightmare.
That'd be
I
intense.
look up like a diagram. I know there's like, yeah, look at that bad boy.
Oh my god.
Pretty insane. You can make a hell of a Where's Waldo scene
Oh my
out of
god,
that.
look at this thing.
Look at the middle portion in the dark.
Oh yeah.
This
Huh?
is the yeah. I mean, gosh. Imagine on a rainy day, like
I
all the
wonder if they're
rain just
building. I wonder how
yeah.
common it is for buildings to collapse,
Oh man.
or
Who knows
like
what they're
portions
even
of
like
the
building
building.
out of? Yeah. It makes me
Right.
think um the Rio de Janeiro, all the shanty towns that are built up in the or sorry, not shanty towns, but the favelas because there's like no
Shanty
regulation out
towns.
there. It's the same type of
Wow.
situation here where the city just like disowns that portion. But they make their life out there. People live there happily. I know there's tons of like gang violence happening there as well, but people are proud. The
Wow.
people from there are proud of what they have.
Wow.
They have a kick-ass view because they're like up in the mountain, which is funny. Like here in America, the rich people live in the mountains, but South America apparently it's the cartels. Interesting little dynamic. Is that what you're looking up?
It's me of
Oh,
Skid
Kowloon.
Row, but like a building.
You can. I think they made the whole thing into a park nowadays. You can look it up, but you won't immediately find it. Because Kowloon itself is like a district.
Oh yeah.
And then if you did up one time, that little pier, that, yeah, if you follow that like to the base of the pier, like to the top where it connects to the rest of the land, it's somewhere around that park is where it used to be.
Oh,
Oh,
it's
it's not
gone.
there.
Yeah, it's gone now. I think it was pretty recent, like the 80s or 90s, that they disbanded it. Yeah, it was only like 2
Oh,
blocks wide. It's crazy.
that is wild. That's unethical.
Yeah, I would not want to live there. But I guess that was like easy living because it was so cheap just to try and squat Kowloons. It
Mm.
could be worth it though. Yeah, and it was like so like the height of everything compared to everything else. Just like this mini city within the city. Crazy. Yeah. Yeah, I should look more
I'm
into
gonna
it. That would be
Google
like a
them.
great episode to go over this.
Yeah. I mean, look at this thing. It's
Yeah.
like
I'm surprised we never got like a guest speaker, like or a dean or someone who's like done a project
oh
on
my
this.
god, look at this.
Right?
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
I've never heard of this.
yeah. This would be a great thesis project. Try and make something out of it.
Wow.
We should do like some kind of design battle thing themed around Kowloon City.
Yeah.
Making a park for Kowloon City, a micro park.
Oh my goodness, look at this.
Look, they did have like a little plaza thing going on.
Yeah,
Must be the government, Kowloon City.
Wow.
No governance.
That's terrifying.
Dude,
It
Hong
says
Kong.
it was about 35,000 residents within its territory of 2.6 hec hectares,
Yeah,
6.4 acres.
pretty much 2 blocks. Crazy.
Wow.
I mean, I'm surprised they could build that high without like regulation. And, like,
Yeah.
who are the engineers here? Let's be honest. They're just making things. They're just balancing out as they go. And if something falls, then they start over. Yeah, crazy. That went on for a couple decades at least.
No, 100 years. From 1898 to 1994. Oh,
Pretty recent.
oh, my bad.
Anyways,
What else you thinking?
because it pertains to outside the field of architecture, so maybe more people could relate to this. But the same phenomenon, I think, can be seen in the film industry. And are any of you guys like big fans of Marvel movies? Because I'm about to talk right now.
I'm a little familiar with them. I won't say that I just forget details easy.
Are you a fan of Marvel?
I enjoy it when I watch it, but I pretty much just watch it and forget about it.
Exactly. So good movies you remember at least a good chunk of it. But a lot of
Um,
movies nowadays you just kind of watch it, especially like Netflix movies. It's like it's just a thing to do. You watch it, you forget about it, no big impact on you. But I watched a video not too long ago that was talking about this phenomenon. I think they call it the um Marvelific Marvelification or the Marvel phenomenon, some kind of lingo, but it was basically the thing that's happening with Marvel movies and how it's actually happening with most movies. And that's why there's so much crap given to the film industry nowadays for not being as good as it used to be. Um, and this guy had this really good with like terms. He had this term called entropic approach, which comes from the word entropy, which, if you know what that is, like one of those words that sounds like a big word at first, but it's like the theory of entropy, which says that things are slowly spiraling outwards or something like that. In other words, it's like going from a more controlled state to a more crazy state. Um, and so within it, and that's like a theory, that's like a physics theory of like the whole world. Like we started from the most controlled state that we'll ever be, and over time, we're just meant to go into a more chaotic state as things spiral out from the center. And that kind of is kind of what's happening as more like humans populate the planet. Like more, we're moving more away from a single idea just because there's so many more people with so many more ideas going on. And so within the film industry, like recently, because all these Marvel movies, I guess it's since like Disney bought Marvel, I want to say is when things kind of turned. Because Disney really turned it into a money grabbing franchise. And I mean, I'm allowed to say whatever I think on this podcast. I think all the Marvel movies that have come up out in the last decade or so are garbage. Save for at least a few ones here and there. I did like some of the
Completely.
Guardians of the Galaxy movies, but um, so the guy in those videos mentioned that movie producers nowadays are moving towards this entropic approach to movie making, which is saying that like the movie, the ideas within the movie should kind of move outward and like grab as much attention as possible, because it is like a marketing scheme to get as many people buying this, buying movies, uh, tickets, or buying streams, and it's a money grab situation for the producers. So the more you can fan your ideas within the movie to as many people as possible in kind of a shallow way, because when you expand outwards, you're grabbing more people, but you're not going as deep with the idea of the movie,
Mm.
I would say. In Star Wars, there's once again there's that individualist director who has a huge input on the whole storyline. But that's what do you call it? Basically the inverse of entropic, non-entropic or something like that. Non-entropic approach to film, which means you're trying to establish a central idea within the film, and every aspect in that film relates to that main idea. So every character that's in Lord of the Rings has some kind of purpose for the main plot. They're the archetypal villain that, causes the main character to change for the greater good of the whole story or something. Um, and so like the movie became more cohesive, and the ideas within the movie were deeper, and so it just made greater movies for the people who are looking for the more deeper connection to movies. They would find it within these non-entropic movies.
Mm.
Nowadays we don't get these really deep films. Like you think about the Marvel movies, one thing that that I really don't like about the movies is that they always have like these little jokes, these little jabs. It's like it's intended to like make a toddler laugh. It's not even they're not even great jokes. Some of them are. Like I like the character that in Guardians of the Galaxy that Bautista plays. I forgot his name, but the big dude with the muscles. He always has a great joke just because he's a funny
Yeah.
character. But
Yeah, Drax.
besides that, like 80% of them don't land as well. And there's another thing he talked about was irony poisoning, which is this one was great because this is something that I think happens to me in my own life that I don't recognize as like right away. It's basically like a zoomer concept, and it's um, kind of like when you see a scene in a movie where there's a character who's crying because they got their feelings hurt by something, and say like another character comes by to kind of comfort them, and there's like this really like genuine human moment in that scene, but then they end the scene um, with a joke that's like self-aware. Like they just finished up the conversation, it was wholesome, and then the person who is giving their console to this person makes a joke, and they're like, "That was kind of, that was kind of cringe or dramatic." How um, I can't really think of it. Like the character will be self-aware of what they just did. They're like, "Oh, there's you can wipe the tears away now," or it's something like that. And it's kind of like a zoomer concept to dodge the emotion of the situation. So, and I know I'm always out to get the zoomers here, even though they're our future audience for this show, maybe. But there's I say was the poisoning. What was the term I said?
Irony poisoning.
Yeah, irony poisoning. And it's basically like it's a method of avoiding the real emotions in order to like break away from it and make it a joke so you don't get deep into those feelings.
Damn, I think I do that.
So yeah, I mean, whenever this guy said that, I was like, that's what that's called? Because I've had this is the way that most of my relationships with my brothers have gone. Because we always are really good about joking around each other and like having the best joke, but we don't as often as I would like to like have really deep personal conversations with each other. And I think that's just kind of a boy thing, especially when you have like 5 other brothers. You only have so much like emotional um capability to expend, I guess. And I don't know why it's a new generation thing, because more and more, like I notice with my younger brothers, they just avoid emotion. They don't share it as often as they should be healthy. But, all of this is like culminating in the culture of our people. And it's what we see happening in the film industry because they're trying to cater to that. And that they think that's what people need. Well, they know it's what people want, but they market it as what you need. Like you need to go see this new Marvel movie. But in reality, I think deeper underneath the skin, people yearn for the non-entropic type of movies that have a deeper message to them. That's why podcasts are becoming more popular, because they do get to these deeper conversations that it's hard to find in movies. You sure as hell can't see it in like TV shows anymore. Some TV shows, but like the news, the media, you never get like the deep introspective take of anything anymore. And this somehow has to do with just the collectivism of our society. Like, imagine the people making these movies. Like, can you name the director of the last Superman movie, the last Spider-Man?
No, not at
Like,
all.
there's not really a head figure leading this approach. It's always like this collective studio, like the Disney studio. It's, you got to know that it's like a group of 20 writers in this room, and they're all passing around the idea, and they're entering groupthink mode. And it's like, how many people can we, like, what is the most amount of people we can please at the same time, even though it's not going to make for the deepest, most sincere idea. And you can kind of see how this bridges to architecture, because it's the same idea that's happening. Like, how many, of course, we're trying to please the client like at all times, but like, that's the same thing with like awards being handed out to architects who are doing the greenest projects. Like, do we actually care that it's like what its impact is on the planet, or is it more of a superficial thing?
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. So this is like
Yeah.
I know I like stumbled my way through this whole topic, but that's kind of what I was trying to get to, is like there's something that's happening underneath the surface subconsciously that is slowly changing the way we do things, and I believe it's for the worse. If you're on the side of like the greater idea of design, or the deeper idea of what it means to be human, like the things that we feel from buildings, experiencing buildings and being in these spaces that, you know, great architects have done, like how come it's so hard to get that feeling back with these bigger firms that are doing tons of way more expensive projects nowadays. Like, what is going on here?
Right, and it's that catch between the two of, well, I can be in these big firms on these big projects, or I can be on these tiny projects all on my own, and you have to really set yourself apart. If you
Yeah.
want to design big stuff on a
My question for you guys is like, there's no way we can move away from this cycle that's happening. Like, I think entropy is something that's inevitable. We are going to move to a more chaotic state unless something wipes out half of humanity and we get some kind of reset, which is, I know it's terrible, but just the natural order of things is to continue to move outward. So, what can we do just as individuals to like bring that back into our firm culture, bring back the the magic of design? I mean, what are some ways to preserve something that we used to have but we're slowly losing? And like, for example, I would say that my firm kind of does, we're working towards something like that with this design, called the design council that we do, where we invite everyone in the firm to uh, attend and have an input on the design, which sounds counterintuitive to the whole collective thing. But one thing that your dad mentioned in his class was he's responsible for, like, his main duty is finding the guy with the best idea.
right.
And so there's still a filter that's coming through him as an individual to identify the best idea and put it into the design. You have a bigger pool to work with now that you have this collective body like underneath you. But I guess his design and ideals, his individualism, still being selective, and you're still, finding these strategies of making a better, more cohesive design. There still has to be that individual somewhere in the process that organizes this thing, I think. That's one way to do it.
Pane, what do you think?
You're a little quiet.
Oh, sorry.
Gotcha.
That there's As you were speaking, there's a couple thoughts that went through my head. It's like, what's the direction should we take? Because I feel like obviously what we're doing isn't working. This like standardized building prototype that's across the board. Um, and in my opinion, I think it's like the United States that is even a little tragic that you can't even tell. For like, if you were to remove the landscape, just buildings alone, compare like building types and styles, would you be able to tell the difference between LA and New York? Or you can, I guess, but like my point is like the buildings look very standardized. They have similar layout styles. There's not really any that stands out. And if they are, they're sometimes even older buildings that stand out that for styles or
Yeah,
attention to detail.
there's a reason that Francis Gehry won last year for the Pulitzer or the Pritzker, right? Am I saying the right one? Yeah. Because I mean, people look at his architectural style and they notice that he's using materials like directly, like within 100-foot radius of where the building is being built. And last century, that was kind of a common thing, at least during like Frank Lloyd Wright's time. Like to use the wood that's from around the area, it's a pretty standard concept. But like we've lost it, and now that we're getting these glimpses of it coming back, people are like, "Wow, that's a genius idea. Where'd you think of that?" Like we've always had the idea, we just lost it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know like back then people were challenged more to creative ideas. They also had more creative freedom without all these regulations. Um,
Yeah.
and also I guess pressure to follow trends. Um, because you even see that with like interior detail, bunch of pressure to follow a certain trend, and this is not long lasting. And then there is that other question of like, well, that something in the past worked, but we're not trying to be in the past. It should be something innovative that resolves problems today, not not the problems 100 years ago. So uh I I do really like the idea of maybe going back and exploring using material from local. There's a term for it, but I just can't think of it right now. Um, but sourcing from the environment around the site. But then there's also this new question of like 3D printing, laser cutting, um, and maybe even a third unique option of combining the two, because I remember seeing about um, I think I saw something about like clay homes being used through 3D printing. I
Yeah.
forget, but there's like really unique ideas. But I know with like unique ideas, the issue is like how do we fund them or get public support for it? Um, it's it's really hard to be supportive of a creative idea when a lot of times things in a capitalist society is based off popularity. That's why trends is even in a way encouraged um in ways that didn't happen previously. So it really it's like your money votes on
Yeah.
what like the money dictates what direction architecture takes, not only in how these projects are funded, but also just influence and culture. It's it's very complex and layered.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just calls for architects to. Was someone hop in? Jay Danny, we're about to wrap up here actually, but you caught the butt end here.
Let's go.
Not that good tonight, or what? Why y'all ending it so early?
Early.
It's
No
been an hour
12
and a
a.m.
half,
No
bro.
12 a.m. pod.
No.
An hour and a half. We would go for 3-4 hours. What you mean?
Well, now we have an editor who has to go through all of that, so maybe not make it so hard on him.
Wait, how's he doing with the other one?
He's about to wrap it up and send it over.
Hurry
Oh,
up.
We're gonna get him
Let's
going
go.
on that first
there we
student
go.
review one. So hopefully we can get some promo stuff out. But as I said, it's a little unreliable at the moment, like when we can get his help and when we can't.
Right.
But
Straight up, like if it's in one sitting, you can push through and crank it out. I think I'm echoing though, but
I don't hear it.
oh, okay.
But okay,
Just-
anyways, to continue Vanessa's point, you were saying like there's so many factors like pulling architects in different directions. But I think in this case, like it's an opportunity for architects to get with the times and use those factors to aid themselves. Like you got to start playing the game, whatever game that is, whether it's the politics or the money. If you can get on these developers' side and push your narrative more, because I mean, the people that should be in charge of how our environment looks should be the designers, not the people with the money bags. Now, the designers need the people with the money bags, but uh, we have to strong arm them a little bit and use that whole aspect of being an individualist again to push forward your ideas. Now, hopefully, you're a good individualist and not a bad individualist, because the bad ones can strong arm them just as much and get what they need as well. But when you have like this super compliant collective that says, yes, client, we will do that. We have a matrix of templates that we can use that we've always done that gives you the most cost efficient building. And we won't waste our time looking at uh, passive cooling for your building in Arizona, something like that. So, I mean, individualism, I think, is that tool to get back ownership of architecture that I think we've lost the past couple decades. Ain't that right, Juan?
I don't know. I'd have to agree to an extent on it. Because, I mean, there's still some big names, aka like Frank Gehry and like Big and whatnot. So, that, I mean, and anyone wants to work with them. And Zaha, even though she passed, but her name's still carried on through her team.
Right. One thing we mentioned about those studios is like we have the big Starchitect name, but nowadays it seems like they're always backed by hundreds of people within the firm, which
Right.
certainly like
It's
distills their it takes the design and kind of distills it to a larger group. So you don't have as firm of a design idea like leading the firm, especially
Well,
when the firm is doing like tens of projects at a time. It's hard to like coordinate all that and keep the same philosophy throughout all the projects, I think.
well, yeah, I guess that's the thing as well. Because back then, I mean, work was different, and the type of work we got and how much of it was different as well. Not everyone could afford an architect back then, and also not they didn't really have as much work. And those who worked for architects were basically, in a way, slaves. Honestly, I mean, we had free internship. I mean, who was it? Frank Lloyd Wright with his scamming
Apprentices,
school and
come
what?
on.
Yeah. Like we don't have that anymore. It's and then also
Monty
with
wants to bring it back.
codes and whatnot, there's just
Yeah.
a need for a bigger team, and
Yeah,
it's
we
more
talk
of like
about codes.
woke culture as well, like saying, "Oh, it's not just the individual anymore, but it's a team thing." Because I mean, it's true. Even back then, it was a team thing, but it was just one dude who was very egoistic and took his name up there and let
Right.
everyone else just do the dirty work while he got the fame and whatnot.
We had a speaker come out of the Taliesin school, not while Frank Lloyd Wright was there, but like the continuation of it. And he was like, he like shit on him while he was talking. Like, yeah, I came from Taliesin, but that guy was a misogynist piece of shit. Well, he didn't say that, but it was like the wokest guest. As soon as, dude, I swear, as soon as we graduated, they started bringing in like the most woke people to talk at the guest lectures.
Yeah,
And there's
Oswald was in
never
charge of
like,
it.
oh, there you go.
What do you expect?
And there's, well, actually, they have a new person.
Yeah,
I thought it
probably.
was I thought it was Pia and Oswald.
Yeah, yeah.
They have
That's like the same
they have
person.
bu- 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 can't think right now. the guy that I took him. That did
McBride?
the who?
McBride?
Yeah, McBride. It's him apparently, which I
Ah.
respect him a lot, but for some
Bro, he's
reason
good.
his guests are a little rough because
It's
there was
because
never like
he's really out there and wanting to push a lot of things, but then come back and refine it. That's what I liked about him. He liked pushing things and then bringing it back at the end and refining it. And I
yeah
guess that's what he can do with all these lectures as well. Like get all these ideas going out there and then refine it back down to what UTA is and how
yeah.
we can start bring
I like
utilizing what they have.
even him was after some of the lectures he'd be like, "Ooh, that was a little not what I expected."
That's
Bro,
funny.
he's pretty blunt with things too. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. Have you ever seen him upset?
Bro, he turns so red.
Dude, it's scary. There was one day, the whole class was building a context model, and I guess just progress wasn't happening on it for a while.
Oh man.
And he that's when we had the combined studio, so like they start off with their combined studio announcements, and then he's like, I need to see my studio in the other room real quick.
Oh
And
no.
man, that's when like the redness just like activated, and it just like you could see it like
Yeah,
invade his face.
it's
And
crazy.
so he was like asking for individuals. He's like, so who was responsible for the trees on the model? And he would ask like people's hands. They're like, let me see the hands. And
Dang.
so he was like calling people out individually, and it was a scary time. Luckily, I did my part, so I was out of that. But then afterwards, he's like, "Okay, I'm coming around for desk crits. It's optional today. Does anyone want any?" And no
No,
one
man.
said any.
Not even you, bro.
Oh, dude.
Bro. Dude.
Hey.
Actually, no. There was we did like one desk crit for the whole week. For that particular week, for some reason, I got him like Monday, and it was Wednesday whenever he was angry. And people I didn't see Monday, I'm coming around for Wednesday to get ready. I'm like, damn. But then I could like hear him across the class, and he was like cooled down by then. That's the thing with him is he's like the coolest guy, but like if
Thankfully, though.
he gets upset, ooh,
Yeah, thankfully he didn't get like that really with us, honestly. But
it
it
was just
it
that one
kind of like
time.
crept up here and there, but it never really came out. But I did
Yeah,
hear him in other studios after me. It's
right.
just like,
Yeah, but he had some wild guests. That guy, I was like, oh shit, this he's because he opened with the fact that he came out of Taliesin. I'm like, shit, this guy's got some real stuff to say. And then from then on, it was just woke. Like, it's really weird how much work these woke firms like put into the stuff that like he had tons of content, but I got like nothing from the content. And that's not me like just being like, oh, he's being woke. I'm just not gonna listen. Like you couldn't comprehend any of it. It's like a collage of material that was just like content. It's kind of what I'm saying with the film industry. It's like include as much content as you can to hit all the buzzwords, but none of it really means anything.
That's a great point.
You look at everything, there's no central idea, there's no takeaways. They're all just scattered entropic ideas. Juan, you missed the idea of entropy versus, I guess,
Evolution.
entropy or non-entropy.
Evolution.
But basically, yeah, evolution is like as soon as the universe was created, it's been in a state of entropy, which is moving from the center outward, moving from order to chaos, and there's nothing to do about it. But I guess within like human culture and human spirit, you can make art that is non-entropic. And that's when you really like focus in on a main idea and get that idea across effectively, and it ends up being that like a a master class of art, a timeless piece of art. And that's where you get like huge movies like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. They're all non-entropic because they move towards a center and towards a main idea rather than doing what happens naturally, which is moving outward and having chaos and ideas. And you miss me just like trashing all the Marvel movies nowadays because that's what they do. It's just like I haven't seen the new Flash movie, but I've seen like scenes from it and the whole like multiverse uh having like cameos from like every superhero in Marvel. The wild thing,
But
and
that
I don't think it got good ratings. So
well, it's because that they're trying to depict what the actual comics were of Marvel now. It's not the big names anymore and just having
yeah,
a nice show. They're trying to actually get into some of the comics, but it's
I
just
think
too
they're
much
missing
because
the
the
mark.
comics are a lot to try to take in a singular movie.
Yeah, like that Spider-Verse movie did really well, and that's like directly trying to draw from like even the comic style,
Yeah, that
and
movie
people
was sick.
appreciated that. Yeah, super cool. Like that's an example of a non-entropic. Like they're moving towards this idea. Even just the art style itself is like this really comprehensive thing that people can get attached to and respect.
Fast and the Furious.
Oh my god.
Evolution right there.
Vin
Have you ever
Diesel catching a car.
met like a super fan of Fast and the Furious?
I haven't met a single fan of Fast and the Furious.
He's on this call.
There's a lot of them in
It's
Cleveland.
Tristy.
Oh, I bet they all drive yellow Mustangs as well.
Orange
Dude,
Toyotas.
the ones with the painted on stripes.
Aren't they all painted on?
Homemade stripes.
Yeah, homemade
Oh,
stripes.
homemade.
God dang. Good
Whew.
old Cleburne.
Heck yeah. But I don't know. That's all my points. I'm tuckered out on this idea. I feel like it was a struggle for me to get it across, and I finally got it at the end there.
That was good.
Yeah, sorry for putting you guys through that.
Bro, apologizing.
I'll
I
ask Lil T, see if it makes any sense whenever he gets to it.
Yeah, I mean, I followed it.
Good.
Because we started off just in general individual versus group, and how group think actually is a gigantic problem because it leads to an absolute lack of true accountability. Extreme individualism also has its own issues as well. It's thought that one is good and the other's bad, but in trying to evolve an idea, and especially a design process or a set of ideals, I think the biggest issue is you aren't doing it with the same group. You're always in a different group. So you're
Mhm.
worried about, and you're always playing to them instead of more of a first principles view on life. It's what's that current trend, and then that moved into sustainability, green, and is it only because it's trendy, or is it because it's actually working? I brought up at least one example of, or two of them, just not, or of problems we've solved that now, or that have been solved through architecture, that are now solved through technology, like AC. And let me share this right quick, but like natural ventilation is not new at all. And it, especially in the Middle East, they have these fucking wind towers that force it in, and often they built an underground aqueduct under it to actually cool a pretty vast space, because it has to be a pretty big space to have all the air I truly circulate, instead of it being like small. But what they see, what's interesting is you really only have to condition the bottom 6 feet. So the deeper it is, it could be hot up here, but it'll be way cooler down here. And this is just one style or one solution that's just been absolutely abandoned. And
I wonder why we don't have those over here. Because we're in the same climate,
problem,
the
right?
same
Yeah,
latitude. Crazy.
yeah. And
Or I
also,
guess you guys down there, not
well,
me.
I mean, all of us in the southwest at least, and so we were on that for a while, and then we improved to the entropic versus evolution, and then Tristy brought up an interesting concept of irony poisoning, and how just the Zoomers, only they have a
I did think of that
very
too.
intense moment, and then cap it off with a joke to like ease the pain, and it's like
You like
dodging.
escape and dodge the emotion
Yeah,
rather than feel it, you know.
right. And then,
That's why there's so many jokes in Marvel
but
movies that are
on
shallow.
that though, like, so what do y'all think about the term laugh through the pain?
It's a Zoomer idea.
No, it's not. I heard it
No, no, no.
before they even existed.
I mean, it depends, like the context. Like, are you
Like
saying like,
comedians.
yeah, comedians? That's like a tool to get through the negative things in life. But if you're like always laughing at the pain and like never talking about it, or there's never another outlet. Because
Hmm.
some people literally always dodge hardships by laughing it off,
Right.
and then they're missing like the solution, like some things that could be solved, some of the hardships that could be solved,
Hmm.
that you're just like ignoring it, I guess. It's like
Right.
the same example I said with my five brothers. Like, for some reason, we always avoided deep conversation just by always joking with each other. Like, that's kind of the game that we played. Like, the social game is like, who can do the funniest thing
Yeah.
without, uh, even if there's like something serious that maybe we should talk about, we avoid it. It's just something like subconsciously that we do.
Hmm.
I don't know if it's just our generation. I said it was the Zoomers, but I think like millennials as well
No, that's
definitely
every
got a piece
generation,
of that.
honestly.
Yeah, like the implication is the prior generations were great at sharing emotions and processing emotions.
Well, okay, yeah, yeah,
Which half the
yeah. I
men
guess
can't
it's
even
just
say a single word to
Right,
their wives now.
right.
yeah.
You're
It's
like you,
definitely everyone, but it's like I don't know. I feel like it's being pushed, like it's being marketed more. Like people are taking advantage of not being emotional about things, more about hide the emotion, make the funny joke, make everyone feel comfortable.
right, because that kind of regulation is not sustainable long term, rather than having the feeling process back into a thought, and then the thoughts back into just an idea, and then it's just an idea, and then here's another idea, and here's another one. But once it's in the pain body, and you are just so, I mean, triggered more or less, than if you just laugh to get out of that, then you better have some funny friends, because Jesus, like that's gotta be like quite brutal. But each of us like has plenty of things that we could not be doing, you know.
Oh. And I'm introverted, and so as an introvert, introverts have more introspection of themselves, so they're supposed to be more in tune with their emotions. And I noticed that, like this, why do I keep forgetting the poisoning? Um,
Irony poisoning.
Irony poisoning. It happens to me as well, and I like try to detach from my emotions. So I can't imagine like the other half of the population extroverted and who acts outwardly a lot more, and I don't want to say they're less in tune with their emotion, but they, I guess,
How would
don't look inward
you
as much.
how, how would you break down when you say introvert and extrovert, in
Well,
like a sentence or two?
okay,
Brady
the
versus
scientific
Jensen.
Yes, and that's a beautiful
Fine.
example of it. But in the
the scientific thing is like,
workings, like being
yeah, it's
deep
like
here.
where you get your energy from. Do you
Right,
get it
okay.
from conversation, or do you get it from your alone time? Where do
Right.
you charge your battery, with other people or not? That's like the main idea of it.
Ding ding ding. Yeah,
But along with that is like different characteristics of like looking inward more or looking forward more for your satisfaction.
yeah, exactly.
That's what I was saying, is like I can't imagine the people who look outward more, because it's harder for them. It would be harder for them to recognize that they have this poisoning that's going on,
Brady.
because they look inward even less. So those are the people out there in the clubs, and they're like, yeah, turn up, baby. Let's not think about the now, or what's that saying that
YOLO.
or- yeah, YOLO, exactly. There's a good example of entropy.
How does entropy and evolution coexist?
So okay, I never climbed on board with the term evolution as the opposite.
Really?
Evolution,
Well, then
isn't
what's the
evolution
opposite?
the same as entropy?
No.
Because evolution is saying it moves forward in the future, like it gradually. It's kind of saying the same thing as entropy, because entropy happens throughout time. Like it'll continue to happen throughout time.
Just because it happens over time, I mean, a plant grows over time. You know, that doesn't make it an inherent quality of sameness. I think it's more about, is it, in calculus terms, is it converging or is it
Right.
diverging as you push all variables to infinity? Evolution is converging on life, trying to stay alive. Entropy is everything spreading away from life. I mean, that's my understanding of it. Like,
Okay. I could see that. I could also see evolution as diverging,
from
right?
what? It's trying to survive. It's converging on life, right?
I guess that makes sense. I mean, like Darwin, only the strongest survive. You end up with a more. Okay. All right. I can get down with it.
What was the fucking point?
I don't know. Entropy. You know, there's this dude I knew in grad school who was wild.
Brady?
and I actually texted you guys a couple times about, because he was my partner on something. He brought up the word entropy. He's like, dude, we should do a design based off of entropy. And I had no idea what it was at the time,
So like a
but he tried to explain it, and I just didn't get it. He actually explained it at a jury, and no one got it. But he was a wild dude with wild ideas. But entropy is like everything, apparently.
bro, just go to a fucking landfill and take a picture, and there's some entropy for you.
Yeah.
In a way, it's still organized and like in a place, or even like trash on the road. Isn't that entropy? In a
LA.
way. Oh my god, so much trash.
That's entropy.
That's entropy.
Society. We do live in that society. Even memes, think about it. Memes are a way to get around the emotion. It's almost like the same thing as comedy. The way to,
Yeah.
I don't know. There's the destructive memes, and then there's like constructive
Destructive
memes.
memes.
Yeah, like, I guess it's like the frequency that you frequent memes. Have you guys ever known a person who like lives and speaks through memes?
Yeah, I mean that's a big problem.
The
It is
younger
very surface level because there is an extreme depth to academia and that kind of rigor and resource because when you present an idea or a paper or anything, it's prodded by how many people, and so then you just have to do a lot more than, oh yeah, here's a funny picture or even something that's very productive and
it's surface level.
unnuanced, right.
And
It's
just because it's like a reference that a certain generation will get only, people feel like they're like in a secret club. They take it as something deep, but it's still just surface level kind of comedy.
just like Reddit.
And that's why people like my brother, for example, when like something bad happens to him, like the emotion that you should feel is like you're hurt and like you want to cry or something. But you'll ask him, you'll be like, "How you feeling right now?" And he'll just respond with like a meme. Like I can't give you a good example right now, but
Like in person,
that's like,
like
yeah. No. Like a phrase from a meme or something. Like feels bad, man. Like that's a meme. And it's literally that's all you have to say.
emotional damage.
Yeah, that's all you have to say. Exactly. That's all you have
Okay.
to say to your peers, and they like understand, but they don't like get into it.
Right. That's basically as deep as saying, I'm bad. I'm
Yeah.
not good. It's like, what's
Yeah.
the
It's
process
like
that's happening here?
the broadest
Yeah.
way possible of like explaining your emotion without, it's like giving an indication of your
Right.
emotion, but also saying, "Don't ask me about it. I don't want to get into it
Right.
any deeper."
Bro, I often think that, I mean, it's mostly from myself, but people are just embarrassed to actually share what they're like upset about. Because when you say it, it's like, oh, actually, I mean, like unless it's like actually like betrayal, But like when people are upset, it's often over something like more trivial, or it's like, oh, but and it's like, well, but are you just being petty and like, or complete projection, and nothing was even actually said, or just a bunch of things.
Now, imagine that's happening to just about everyone on the planet, but at the same time, everyone's connected and they can voice these concerns and anonymously to whoever they want in any manner, instead of just finding a nearby friend to ask mentally talk about it, honestly,
But that's social
but
media.
Yeah.
instead they use like a meme format or just a rude format to
Right.
get out their
Wow.
emotions they're actually feeling. I mean, that's what it is.
We have completely outsourced our community, and I mean, I've been pretty anti-globalist for a while, and thought like completely because global trade, you're opened up to a bunch of other things, but in extreme globalization, you end up so spread out and so thin, and having it be a lot more. Jeez, I just fucking lost my point.
Feels
Womp
bad, man.
womp. Feels bad, man.
Just meme it out.
Oh, just meme it out. No, but we've outsourced all of our manufacturing and a bunch of our agriculture, and as well as our communities, our thought leaders, our
'Cause it
our
has to happen
institutions are
because
outsourced.
the world is growing and getting more divergent, which means everything is getting diluted down, and someone else is going to have something you don't have, so you're going to always need to rely on other people. But
So
solution's
then
not always going to be the best.
where are you supposed to start when you are handed a blank piece of paper and say go?
The magic within yourself.
From
The
where?
stuff, the stuff that you grew and cultivated in school, because that's like the base. That's like mothership of
Yes and
what
no.
you know. I mean, even deeper than that is just
Right.
in like intrinsically within yourself, what you know, the same feeling you experience when you're in an amazing space is ingrained in you. And you should know that intrinsically without having to go to a university to learn it,
What if
explain
you've
back to
never
you.
been there?
That's why so many great architects traveled and
So then you can
experienced this
only
stuff
do
firsthand.
what you know? How do you push beyond into what you
That's what
don't
Boswell
know?
said. Don't you guys know what a proper residence looks like? You
Yeah.
guys are drawing your apartments. The kitchen, you should not open the entry into the kitchen. But it's what happens. I mean, think about it. If every single person in that class was like a world traveler, imagine how like fruitful the ideas would be from the get-go without having Boswell yelling at you to spit out something better. I mean, we are what we
Yes
experience.
and no, so doesn't that kind of demand that you have that more collectivistic experience at least to be exposed to. I mean, I think it mostly comes back to that genuine interest and passion. And passion is loose, but interest is a bit stronger, and the interest in evolving and pursuing a craft rather than just one and done, or anything for just cash, but
Yeah.
genuine interest in affecting life in however you can. And that's, I think, where it has to start from. And if you look at Corb or Mies or Bright, I think Wright actually less, but Corbin, Mies, they were doing what they wanted, and were interested in their own pursuit for the most part as they saw fit, rather than, okay, I have a client for this big hospital, it's this, here's the structure, here's the skin, and then here you go. no innovation. Instead of, okay, here is an absolute blank piece of paper. What questions are we about to ask? What's the start? And it does go back to schooling, but if the start is what have we done lately, what's trendy, what's the most cost effective, what's the easiest to ship in, because then you aren't even thinking about anything local. So just like all of these are wrong questions, but then starting from use, local materials, and an overall life of the space, the place, and the physical building, because it could be a bank and then a restaurant and then an apartment and then a church and like who knows, like it almost wouldn't have to always be the exact same. Or should it be? I don't know. That's like its own discussion. Did really like the analogy you had of the movie industry and the almost lone wolf director, and if there's a
Those are the
way
best.
to bring that back, because the economics of our business are what they are, but there's also other adjacent businesses out there that can put us up against just design services. And also, as we move into more ownership and more smarter contracts, you can have even longer ownership or even a bit more into diversification at a smaller price. Instead of being like, okay, I am a landowner, it's more like bullies your family a landowner. That's like kind of how you do it. But what's that step if you aren't even like in it? And there's just so many questions I could ramble on and on and on.
That good enough for you, Juan? Went half an hour more.
Bro, he's counting the
Thought he
minutes.
summed up the whole thing. Entropy, guys. Entropy feels
Chill.
bad, man.
Oh, I said I'm feeling pretty out now.
Yeah. Yeah. We went off the deep end in this one.
Dude. It's all good.
Well, good shit. I think we got a lot out of it. It took me a while to like finally get it there.
Yeah,
Because I wrote some notes, but like I couldn't really grasp it
like spit
till
it
the
out.
very end there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Not
nice,
easy.
nice.
Because it's something that's like I've been feeling for a while, especially like the whole movie industry thing. Like I know something is happening that's causing these movies to be bad, but I can't quite put my thumb on it. And that one video really helped kind of propel these ideas forward. And you just draw the connection between that and architecture and individualism and collectivism, and boom.
And boom. Yeah,
All right, guys.
it's very interesting. So I'll ask him myself, but this is on like future news. But I'm trying to crank out the first architecture and crime episode by next week, and I'm pretty close. Is it worth asking Little T anything? Oh, like edit wise, or try and because I haven't seen like what he's done, nor
How
like timeline. Um,
what you need a stylistic edit or busy work?
no, it's more like how they do these other YouTube crime shows, and basically like daily show type of like just talking in an image over here, so nothing like crazy, though like full blown YouTube of like narration over constantly over B-roll, no, like that's a lot, but I think if I'm just like talking and explaining it, and I printed out like I think like 3 or 4 times now in a test run. It's about 20-25 minutes, and I just like caught like could have out more content, but I do want to like show the buildings and the people maybe, and just other visuals, but the idea is it's also perfectly fine audio, and I'll hopefully be descriptive enough that audio is fine. But I do kind of like the real good audio ones have the like intro and like almost breaks an episode, of like audio sounds.
Background.
What?
Want like ambiance?
Not through the whole thing, but like to like get you in there. But I'll probably find something cruelty free. But honestly, after this one, I'll probably enlist Phil T after he sees like what I do in this one. Because honestly, I don't think the edit will take all that long. It's just like snagging some pictures and throwing it up, and like I'll have like the hard cuts, but whatever, it is what it is.
Okay. Look up Mr. Ballin on YouTube. And watch a video of his sometime, because he does long form storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
and for some reason, like most of it's just the camera looking at him. Of course, he has like a green screen or something for a background, but
Yeah.
then like he'll flash an image, or he'll say
There
the
is a
image.
mountain range in the middle of the desert.
Like he has a series of like 3 stories that has a shocking image associated with it, and he'll say the image at the end.
Well, he's like super animated.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna have to like
He's like
step
a
it back
master
and be like,
storyteller. Yeah, he keeps it like super interesting the whole time.
yeah.
And usually I don't just stare at people telling a story on YouTube, but for some reason it works for him. So
Yeah.
look at his for reference. But yeah, you can give him like a reference to go off of,
Yeah,
and
I've
maybe
been
you can feed him the images that you want, and that should be easy.
yeah, I've been shooting a few over as I like come across them. But especially as this rolls forward, because it'll be at least 8 um episodes, and pretty poor on a month, um rather than like
The stream and recording, right?
I
I mean, that's fine. You can keep going. I just like insider business stuff.
yeah. So he flashes up the images full screen, and then the background is like a blurred picture of the same image. So that's like pretty easy.
Oh yeah.
And it seems like a little more engaging. And he does the whole like Ken Burns like zoom in effect on it. But his green screens are cool.
Yeah. Really sets the mood.
Yeah, like I don't know if I'll be that animated, because I'm just that's a lot.
Well, it's more so for like his actual storytelling,
Yeah,
because he did the research and
yeah,
he read
Registered with a
straight
phone
from
company.
primary sources,
yeah.
but he fabricates it into an actual like story so that you don't know. Like he saves the good bits till the end, like a Stephen King novel.
Nice.
Like puts it in a way like he'll read the main source, and like the news source will say this guy died from this after fighting with his wife for 2 weeks. She finally did away with him or something like that. But he'll take that and like actually put that character as a first hand, and say like he had been fighting with his
have
wife
come running out of the
I'm pretty sure it's like a nonfiction novel where some of it's made up because the author doesn't know everything that happened, but they can still take it and add some like human factor to it, even though it's just retelling history. So you create the character. Like I don't know what's the first episode about for this. Is it the hotel?
No, it's the Republic National Bank building.
Oh, for JFK, right?
Oh yeah, what were you asking? For him?
Just the main story, like it's about JFK.
Yeah,
And then
and that
building this-
entire conspiracy. There's so many fucking people, bro. My mind is exploding.
Yeah. So
Just say that.
I guess since we're talking about buildings and not people, but at some point the person will come into play when you
No,
talk.
no. It's both. It's architecture and crime. So
Right.
it's split up in to the boring but interesting architecture stuff, and then the crime, and then all the people story of it. So,
Gotcha.
but it's not as because it's JFK. A lot of it's just setting up the ground work. Everyone knows like it's thought like, oh, he walked up and he pulled the trigger and he reloaded and he pulled it's like it's poor saying they did these things. And all these people were involved. Bro, it's actually disgusting the amounts that everybody sat on everybody's board. They all like the banks, the oil, the military contractors, the CIA, the Nazis are involved, bro. I'm not even joking. And communists. It's
Bro's about to turn into Alex Jones.
We're
We're losing him. Oh,
Where'd you get all this?
one book.
Who
One
wrote it?
book. A
by Alex
a
Jones.
Alex Jones.
I know.
No. It's very thoroughly researched, and the back of it has like 100 pages of notes, index, bibliography, and it has like a bunch of other essays in it. The author's H.P. Abo Perley. I I hadn't heard of him, but the guy who wrote the forward on it is like a preeminent researcher as well. Um, but what's crazy about this book is they had this whole new piece of evidence, which is allegedly a spy's date book, and all of the coded times and dates and all of that. And there's a lot of corroboration, and it's not like this is nothing. This book is gigantic.
Hmm.
And but it's a mind number to read, honestly, because
Get the audiobook.
no, like how it's written it's
Oh,
very difficult, because also I'm not so good with names, and he'll start off a sentence like like Jack Aston was great friends with Scorinzi. Well, his cousin, blah blah blah, in the summer of I was like, whoa, this is too many people, and we aren't even at the person yet who we're actually speaking about. But it's quite uh in 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 tightening, because the book speaks nothing about the actual building. All of that was, its own research. What the book speaks about is what happened inside of the building, and it speaks about all of the tenants. And a bit of a rundown is the Republic National Bank building was literally the bank that channeled countless CIA funds. And it's at least been found that they did channel $600,000 for them. And that is because all of the people on this bank and on the board are all tied pretty much directly to LBJ. Like, no joke. But the bank had a subsidiary called the Howard Corporation that was into all kinds of mostly oil and real estate. Well, the Howard Corporation started because they traded stock to the bank. Stock of what? The corporation, but like the future earnings to the bank. Because back then and still now, a bank is really only supposed to be a bank. They're not supposed to have other kinds of gross conflicts of interest, And especially then, banks actually could have no branches at all. The bank was the bank. That was the bank, and that's it. And it wasn't until like the 90s that changed. Pull pack it up. The Republic National Bank fully owns the Howard Corporation. Well, the Howard Corporation started a trust that then completely owns the corporation, and then the bank now owns the trust. And because it's a trust, the trust does not have to disclose any filings at all to them. And what the trust did is they went out and they bought up a bunch of other banks in Texas, up to 27 of them, and instilled their own people in charge. And then the chairman of the Howard Corporation also has his own personal foundation. And the foundation is the start of it being funneled through. Well, the same guy, Carl Hoblitzel, is also then named chairman of the bank. So he's chairman of the bank, he's chairman of the company, and he's chairman of this foundation. All the while, there's an entire sister foundation in Houston called the Houston Foundation. And that homie, Jaworski, is best friends with LBJ. And Jaworski had his private law offices in the National Republic Bank building.
But you're so deep in this.
Bro, it's too much. Like,
so basically what you're saying is
It's-
RFK was going after the right people.
yes.
Because he's going after all the big corps.
Exactly. And
They killed his uncle.
It's really back to that Carlin quote. You don't even have to have a formal conspiracy when so many interests converge. And oil, military contracts, real estate holdings, all of that was about to change under JFK. And then they took him out. And this is basically laying out and like kind of like calling the people by name of like because it's always like, oh yeah, there's this like conspiracy. It's like, no, that's a cop out. there were literal people involved who had stuff to gain. Oh, another fun fact is the judge that swore in JFK, LBJ, after JFK died, was literally a trustee on of the Hoblitzal Foundation. Like he's involved. Like it's all guilt by association. You know, like I don't have like here's the order, kill Kennedy. You know, but they have a thing, Project Lancelot. That's supposedly what it was called. Yeah, and the entire thing was to set up, uh, obviously Lee Oswald as a patsy, because also the instant it happens, the instant he's killed, it's reported that there was one employee missing from the roll call at the Texas School Book Depository, Lee Harvey Oswald. That roll call, there's no evidence it ever happened, and people have testified it didn't happen. But the minute he's killed, it's put out in the news that that happened, and all of his information is put out there instantly. They instantly know everything about him. The moment, the
I
hour.
always wonder about that.
Right, like, how do you instantly know? I don't.
Like the
And
school shootings. I mean, not all of them, but some of them. It's like
yeah,
instantly know about these people.
that's a whole other conversation. I have some like pretty cold hard facts about them laying the patsy ground work, because also it was like put out there not just like his address, but his entire past of look, he went to Soviet Prussia, he's a commie, blah 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 blah, you know.
Trying to sell it as quick as possible.
Yeah, yeah, but this is really interesting and really deep.
Yeah, dude, it
And,
sounds like you're like really into it.
well, because I
Makes
think
me
other
really into it.
people might be also, but because JFK is one I've been interested in like since
What
it
if this gets
happened.
a million hits on YouTube?
Bro, what's
All of our
wild
fans
is
expect us to do conspiracy things now.
no, bro, fuck them,
Fuck the fans.
bro. Real talk, it'll have like 12 views. What do you mean? Put like over like the whole thing and even like the practice of it, but what we really need is like a gigantic editing team or just like hours on that, which is where I'm really focusing my time now.
Well, shit, Lil Kennedy might be interested in the topic you'll have.
Right.
I
Because
don't know. I
also
have no idea why he chose that.
what?
I have no idea why he chose that name. Must be a meme.
Phil Kennedy, yeah, it probably is. But speaking of that, I'm actually planning on working on that tonight actually. So I'll touch y'all roll and but going forward, we should try and have y'all and Gustavo like try and run some
Shit, I'll talk about the
calls.
Kowloon walled city.
Well, there's the textures, but we can also run a design challenge or even like preview. I still haven't shown my portfolio, and I probably should soon. But the 60th anniversary of JFK is literally next week, so I feel
Perfect.
obligated to drop the first episode on that day, and I'm trying to get promo. I'll put my weekend is slams, so I'm trying to do it like over these next few days and early
You
next
could
week.
ask the RFK campaign for sponsorship.
That'd be
We're
cool.
doing God's work over here.
Doing God's work.
Truth.
Alright, chill.
All right. Good night,
See you,
everyone. Thanks
see you,
for
Juan.
hopping in, Juan.
Yes, sir. See you.
Yeah, have a good one, boys.
Have a good night.
All right.